a woman becomes a new woman every 7 years, an identity.
Right. The reason why that is because every 7 years is a Saturn cycle. Okay, we start with the 0 point of birth, the seven. We start with the first 7 years, which is completely subconscious, and then we go to our first Saturn square where we start to separate ourselves from our environment. And then we go to the next 7 years where we develop in our sacral energy. When we turn 13, 14 years old, the sacral energy is kind of like activated. By that time, we already know puberty didn't hit for real. And then the next 7 years is when we go from 14 to 21. And this is the year of, graduation taking place, right? This is when we have our Saturn opposition. And then we go from the opposition in the 3/4 to the full Saturn return at 28. So we got the first square at 7, the opposition at 14, and then we got the 3/4 way from 21 to 28. 28 is the full return. Okay, it goes a full cycle. So every 7 years, yes, there is a shift in everyone's energy, not just women, because Saturn has to go through, building the structures, which is why the first Saturn return, when you turn 28, you're looking at everything that you've done for the last 30 years of your life that you have done and have to take accountability for, whether you knew at the time or not what you were doing. So moving forward for the next 28 years or so, you and then you go through the same cycle all over again after you get through the Saturn return, you start the cycle over. So within the first 7 years, you're like, okay, I gotta be responsible for my life. And now, especially more in the area where you didn't know you actually have full power, and therefore you may have given your power completely away, or you've gained power and now you got more responsibility. Either way, after the first Saturn return, the second Saturn square you have is 7 years after that, right? And that seventh year is about, again, you adding more responsibility because it's a square, but the added responsibility creates internalized tension, like how it did when you were 6, 7 years old, where you separate your physical reality and you are separating and you're going into another direction, which ultimately will lead you back to the full Saturn return, where were you listening, were you paying attention, were you following instructions from spirit, or were you distracted by the temptation to not be disciplined because it was comfortable, instead of doing the north node work and facing the fear or the doubt or the discouragement. you know that's how that happens. Because when we first turn 6, 7 years old, we gotta go to school. Most of us go to school and separated from our parents, or we gotta do schoolwork or something where we have added responsibility we've never had before, and we don't understand why we have to do it. But when you're post your first Saturn return, you already know why you have to do it. It's just about, are you going to go with the flow of it, or are you going to resist it? And what you resist persists, right? So yeah, every 7 years we do go through different phases and cycles throughout our life that bring changes to our physical reality, because what's inside of us is changing or already went through a change. So now the physical reality has to change. And we think we got to catch up to what's changing, but the work of the change has already been done, which is why when we shift, the physical reality changes. And now we're already starting a new chapter and restructuring ourselves in a new reality while physically getting acclimated with the reality that just shifted. And it's a never ending process. It just keeps going. And people who give up and don't want to work, or they forget their why, or they just find it so hard to create a structured, disciplined life plan, that they end up just repeating the same thing over and over and never really going anywhere. And usually at that point when you just don't learn, usually before the second Saturn return, is like, okay, you just not getting it. Like, nowhere near saving at this point. You'll be taken out and have to come back. But some people make it to well past the second Saturn return, maybe even getting a third Saturn return. You know, it's people that make it that far. It's not too many, but there are some, and it has nothing to do with, you know, specifically what you eat or how you sleep or what you drink. It's really about how in tune with yourself you are and how well you listen to yourself. Because you, regardless of how long you came here to live, if you do what you came here to do, what you're supposed to do, and you're structuring yourself according to yourself and not your outside environment, that awards you more time to yourself, which could be a blessing to have more time on your life.